And here we go. It is draft week on Tuesday, our Hey Mary Kay edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Finally, draft week, Mary Kay, between the Deshaun Watson stuff and just the Browns not having a first round pick anymore. I know I don't want to say it snuck up on me. We've obviously been aware of it, but it certainly has sort of gotten here quickly, or more quickly than it's felt in past years. And I think there's probably no other sign of the times than here we are on draft week. And a lot of the questions we got from Football Insider subscribers were about Baker Mayfield. So we did get draft questions. We're going to get to some of those a little bit later, but let's just start with Baker. So we got two here, one from Paul Spencer, our buddy in New York City, and another one from Megan, who sends us a lot of questions as well in Akron. Paul asks, hey, Mary Kay, what odds would you give Baker Mayfield being traded during the draft? So we'll start with that, and then we'll get to Megan's question.
You know, I would say there's probably about a 50% chance that Baker Mayfield will get dealt during the draft. And that really is going to come down to whether or not, for the most part, the Panthers decide to trade for him. Obviously, we know they have the number 6 overall pick. They've looked hard at Kenny Pickett. They've looked hard at Malik Willis. And if they get one of those guys, then there's a pretty good chance then they might not try to trade for Baker Mayfield. They might, in that scenario, go with Sam Darnold and their young guy and see how it goes. So that's something to keep an eye on. I mean, by the 6th pick in the draft, we might have a pretty good idea if Baker Mayfield is getting dealt or not. So definitely something to watch, but I'm going to put it at 50-50 because even though we've known all along that the Panthers have this number 6 overall pick, I still have heard that they have been interested in Baker Mayfield because they feel that out of anybody that they have right now or could get right now, they could put him in there and let him start some games and try to hit the ground running and go out and win some football.
So the Panthers are in a really tough spot because obviously they still need a quarterback. Maybe in a perfect world, they wouldn't want to necessarily win a bunch of games this year and maybe solve their quarterback position next year. But Matt Rule is probably on the hot seat a little bit. David Tepper is a pretty impatient owner. This is a difficult position for them. Now, David Tepper, we also know all the Pitt connections there, that maybe he just really wants Kenny Pickett. But the question from Megan was, hey, Mary Kay, do you think Baker will be off the roster by this time next week? I mean, is that really what it's going to come down to if the Panthers decide to pick a quarterback or not? Is it kind of Panthers or bust?
You know what? I don't know if it's Panthers or bust. I think there might be another team or two just kind of laying in the weeds just to see what happens in this draft weekend. And if the Panthers don't get him, then I do think that there is a chance that maybe the Seahawks could get interested. If they look at Baker Mayfield and discover that perhaps the Browns are willing to do something where you mess around with some draft picks a little bit, you do some NBA style creativity and, and you mess with those numbers a little bit so that the team that's taking him on doesn't have to pay the whole $18.86 million. I think somebody will get interested in that scenario. There could be teams that are just kind of hanging out and waiting to see what happens and could jump in and get interested, a team that we haven't even heard about yet.
Here's one from Scott Mandel in Los Angeles. And this is I guess this is one of the reasons that gives me pause for if for some reason Baker were on the roster and they needed him to play. Scott says, hey, Mary Kay, I'm amazed that no Browns players have publicly come out in support of Baker Mayfield, unlike what happened when OBJ was released. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, quite frankly, I'm very surprised that no one has done that because there were a lot of players that were in Baker Mayfield's corner. And Dan, just like you say, that the pendulum has swung to the point where, Baker went from being a playoff quarterback to people thinking that he should be playing in the USFL right now. I think the pendulum has swung equally from thinking that all these players followed the Pied Piper of Baker Mayfield to now everybody hates him. I don't think all of his teammates hate him. I really, truly don't think that's the case. I think there are plenty of players on this team that still believe in Baker Mayfield. The guys like Nick Chubb, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, guys that have blocked for him, have watched him play hurt, guys that have just gone to bat for him and were willing to, to do whatever it takes to help him be successful. But the fact that none of them have come out in support of him vocally, that does surprise me a little bit, because I think they should have. I think he's out there on an island right now and could use a little verbal support from some of those guys that believed in him. And why aren't they doing that? Well, you know what? They might not want to give the illusion that they're not supporting Deshaun Watson. I mean, you have to be so careful about what you say at this time. I mean, it's a very, very delicate situation, especially because Deshaun Watson has the background that he does. And I'm sure guys don't want to make it seem like they're not on board with him. So I think people are just kind of being careful, being cautious, not saying too much right now. But you would think that there have been opportunities over the last couple of months for some of his teammates to come out and say something nice about Baker Mayfield.